Hi, Stacy.
Hey, Tim.
What's the news?
It's hot out. That's the news.
Guess
the weather.
Guess who our new guest is?
Who?
Well, you'll have to wait and see.
Oh, dang.
Let's roll the footage.
Hi, Stacy.
Hey, Tim. In Their Neighborhood is a show where we bring in people to elaborate on what exactly it is that they do in the community so that we can recruit more volunteers for them, educate about the nonprofits that we have, and really we want to connect volunteers with their volunteering vision.
We have amazing organizations in Peoria that rock and make Peoria rock.
That's right. Peoria is an awesome place, and if we just take the time to give back, then it's going to be that much better.
Our goal is to help people that kind of want to volunteer but maybe are a little afraid of volunteering, and give them the opportunity to volunteer in an easy way and get to know the organizations before they even get involved.
Being a volunteer hero. There you go.
We're looking for volunteer heroes.
Those volunteer heroes out there. We're really about highlighting volunteers, difference makers in Peoria area, and promoting civic pride.
That's right.
And we're talking to a difference maker here. This is Steve Tarter.
Oh, thank you.
So if somebody were to ask you, who is Steve Tarter, what would you say?
I would say, well, I'm the old guy who used to write for the Journal Star, and a longtime Peorian. I came out here to Bradley way back. I came out here in 1967 from Boston, and wound up staying, graduated and then stayed, and enjoy it. You know, your little intro kind of said it. Peoria is a fascinating place. I think there's many aspects to it. The size of Peoria. Stacy and I were just talking about, you know, it's big enough that you can, I don't know if you get lost in it is the right way to put it, but it's also small enough that, oh, you know so-and-so, he's my uncle, or, you know, do you work for, you know, we said Paul Gordon earlier, who I worked for at the Journal Star. So it's a great kind of combination.
Yeah.
And I've had the good opportunity working at the paper, and before that, the bus company, to kind of learn a little bit, I won't say a lot, a little bit about Peoria.
So why did you stay?
I think there are a couple of reasons. I think it was familiar territory. I guess I went against the grain because most people go to Boston to go to school. I left Boston to go to school because I'd grown up there. I didn't have the same attraction that I think would have if you came from somewhere else in the country. I think I found Peoria to be comfortable. And you know, you talk about a difference maker. One of the things, and I think kids need to know this, or adults too, is Peoria's of the size and the opportunities where if you want to say, like I did, want to go down to the Apollo Theater and run old movies, you can. Whereas if I'm in Chicago, Boston, wherever, you know, I could be a part of something, but you don't have that direct opportunity that maybe you have here. You know, that's the charm of I think a place like Peoria, where you look around and you think, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. Certainly all the nonprofits you're mentioning, there's opportunity there to do almost anything. And you guys explore that, I know, every week on your program here. And I kind of dabbled in it at the paper, where you'd run into people and all of a sudden you'd realize, wow, you know, right under my nose, whether it's on the south side, East Bluff, or the uplands where I live, there's somebody doing this, and this, you know, and it's fascinating because they might live next door to you and you didn't know it. So that's the beauty, I think, of Peoria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've probably written a lot of stories, right?
Yeah. So people would say, oh yeah, roll your eyes. Yeah, I read a lot of his stories, you know.
Yeah.
And that's been good.
So, out of the stories that you've written or investigated, what do you think are some of the most striking stories that you've read or done over there?
Well, you know, the stories I wrote, and you know, we talked about Paul Gordon, who was the business editor for many years of the paper, who I worked under, and was a great editor, I should say, because a little sidelight before I answer your question, and I'm not avoiding it, but it just occurs to me as we were talking about Paul. I'd write a story, and I'd have a clever lead, or what I thought was clever lead, and I'd put it in there, and then I'd wait to see what Paul's reaction was, because he calls it up on the screen, looks at it, And it was funny because, not that I did this all the time, because usually he's writing pretty straight for the daily paper. But anyway, when I did that, all I know is the reaction Paul would do, he'd just give me a look, like a quizzical look, like, you didn't say anything. I go, okay, I'll change it. It's amazing how sometimes that works. But I think most of the stories that I wrote in the time I was at the paper, a lot of them were business stories. So it was really kind of going out and talking, well, Caterpillar, obviously, but usually those are pretty perfunctory. Second quarter report, here's what it is, and you just report it. I think the small business stories were fascinating because you find out how somebody gets started. And, whether it's, PDC is picking up the trash, or somebody who's doing an ice cream store on Main Street and has had to go through all these things before they got started. Those strike me as fascinating stories. I liked a lot of the media stories that I was able to do about radio, TV. That's part of Peoria, and of course that's all changing with the internet and all the things that we're noticing now. The paper is a good example where you don't have the numbers of people working that you used to have. And this is across the country. But I think stories, when I have to think about it, and of course, first, you have to understand old people, the memory is I need the internet to tell me, oh yeah, I wrote that 8 years ago, that's right. and sometimes that's a problem because, well, first of all, forgive me if I run into somebody and they know me because I came to their house or came to their business and wrote a story and it was in the paper, and that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it was just a day, as it is for any reporter, it's a daily event. Mm-hmm. And you forget, unfortunately. We probably shouldn't. Some people don't. I do. But then I call it up and has that really been 8 years? Has that really been 9 years since I went in there? And that's part of the fascination of, I guess, doing these things. But it's a hard thing. I know the general answer to your question, Tim, would be it never failed to amaze me how impressed I was with the stories that people told, whether it was about their business or whether a challenge, their hobby, whatever the thing is. Because I go back to the Observer. That's a paper that maybe your older viewers will remember. Back in the 70s, where a lot of the times that was another era. I was talking mostly women because. And this is a little bit sexist now, so hey, remember the era. But it was Woman on the Go was always our lead story, and then In the Kitchen was another story, which was predominantly women, not always, but predominantly women, and it was usually family stories. But that was a suburban paper, soft news, you'd have to say, but it was telling a story that otherwise wasn't being told, and those were interesting stories to me. I mean, I was able to learn a lot there. After a few years, you're going, here we go, we're going to do this. But those are the things that kind of collectively I remember about Peoria. So, I could go on, but I'll let you ask another question because I tend to drift in some of these things.
Sure. So what are you doing now?
Since I left the paper, I'm still writing. Still writing my Tarter Source was the podcast and blog, I guess you could say, that I do on Facebook, and I still do that. And usually it's a topic. It used to be more local than it's been now. I hope to get back to more local stuff, but it's usually something about media, about how the world is changing. Certainly, newspapers are changing. Movies have always been a big interest to me. As I mentioned, the Apollo Theater. I used to do the old movie, and my kids would tell you, his version of movies is not my version. We're talking about 40s movie, 1940s and things like that. Film noir is a great interest of mine. But I think now what I'm focusing on is freelance. I hope to get back to a more regular thing, because one of the things that I noticed since leaving the paper and since finding you and Stacy here, there are other outlets in this community we need to support, because the old outlets, the ones that I'm more familiar with, are shrinking. And I don't think just the newspaper is not the only one. I mean, we're talking about radio stations. We've all heard about WCBU's kind of merger with ISU. That's I think a case of the media now is going through that. I don't know where it's going. That'd make an interesting blog if I knew, but it's changing as people, I think, go to convenience. You know, pull their smartphone out and they find out what's going on. They don't wait for that paper to hit the front porch or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock report on television. I mean, those things are, still there, but we're morphing into a world of immediacy and Facebook and online and all the rest of it. So I hope to make that adjustment, even though I'm an old guy and barely know how to turn the TV on, let alone find all the things. But once I do, usually it's we can find something of interest.
We had talked. I was driving through Fort Wayne, and there's a Lowe's, there's a Hardee's, there's we're all the stores are the same, and I'm like, the only thing difference between Fort Wayne and Peoria is the landscape, right? So what's the difference between the two? And that's kind of what we've been trying to really highlight. And I think that's kind of what you're doing in some of the ways with your writing is, rather than a homogenized city, what's really at the difference? What's the heart of Peoria?
And I think you folks explore this on a weekly basis, but the different neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods have to be dissected further because when you talk about the South End, for instance, South Side, South Peoria, whatever you want to use, it's a huge area, and you could segment it and go all there. The Uplands up by Bradley, which is going through, I don't think it's going through a big change, but it's the area of where they're building that the big business engineering complex at Bradley. So that kind of is, kind of taking the attention there. I think the neighborhoods in Peoria are fascinating to me because that's really where you learn the folks that are on the ground, the grassroots things. Downtown is a great study too, even though I know, and we're downtown here right now in your studio, that people would say, oh, there's nothing going on in downtown Peoria. Compared to XYZ. Well, yeah, it's not what it was when Bergner's was opposite Carson's, Perry Scott, and you had all the theaters open down here. That's what I remember when I came to Bradley in '67. We'd walk downtown and then take the bus back because we were obviously too tired to go up the hill or something. I don't know why we did that. But there was always stuff downtown, and there still is, but it's changed. You didn't have, Sheridan Village was around, but you didn't have Northwoods Mall or Shops of Grand Prairie or East Peoria, all these areas that are now going through yet another change because of the internet. So it's fascinating to me that we have all these stories to write about. And the one thing I think about, because it's been, I've had these blinders on for all these many years. We talk about the information age, how we get all this stuff comes flying at us. Yet local news is needed more than ever. And what you guys are doing is so important because, yes, we can get all kinds of national news. You can find out what Trump's saying and all the people that are criticizing back and forth and all that. So flooding the internet, and sports is there. And so we have all that. And you're free to take as much or a little as you want. But what about Peoria? What about East Peoria? What about Congerville? Or whatever you want to mention.
Sure.
That you need those. You need to know that because you might find that it's right under your nose, and somebody that there is doing something that you should be aware of. So I just think that's a big part of where we need to go now, because the outlets that we came to believe in and rely on are shrinking, and for many reasons that we don't need to explore here, but because it doesn't mean we don't need that information. So
Right.
we need to give it to them anyway. So I guess I'm still on the case, but I don't know where these stories go now. It's just like, here's my latest story. Anyone want to read it? There it is.
Well, you're going to bring some
Yes,
of those stories
some of the
here.
stories, right, absolutely.
Tarter Sauce is going to be part of Peoria Life here
We appreciate
tomorrow.
that. Yes,
And check us out. Tomorrow's a special one. We're 10:45.
right.
Tomorrow live on Facebook, and we'll be settling in 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. So
Right, and I
yeah.
appreciate that because I think that's something that I used to love doing at the paper with the podcast, because oftentimes the podcast would be a spin-off of a story. If we'd just written about the grocery desert, or those whatever the food desert in Peoria, which, when the Kroger's closed, was a big discussion and is a big discussion. Well, then we'd have somebody come on and talk about, their plight or their plans, and obviously those plans are still in the works. But there's so much to talk about, and hopefully we can fine tune it. And then if people have ideas, they get in touch with you and Stacy, and and you guys cover the neighborhood beat, and I can cover whatever's left out there, because there's so much to do. We don't have to worry about who's on first, kind of thing.
Yeah, you'll be talking with a lot of difference makers and those types of things. So I think you'll talk.
I've been going through a list of folks that hopefully still remember me, and I can call them up and say, hey, I'm doing this thing again, come on down. But I think I love doing this sort of thing, because it's informational exchange, but it's an aspect of radio. I know you've got it on TV as well. But radio, where you hear voices and people discuss things, that to me is time honored and still great. And we need to kind of continue that. I'm a fan of old radio, to the point that, and I have to do it when I'm driving alone, because no one else. I don't want to subject anyone else to my sort of a avocation here. But yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is just what I listened to in the car. An old radio series that ran from throughout the 50s.
Stories.
No, I have no idea.
You
Sorry,
probably don't
guys.
want to know either. But it's funny. He's the action-packed insurance investigator, and they kind of adopted a private eye, and they brought him to the modern era. Well, modern if you count the 50s. It ran until '62, when the curtain came down on radio drama, national radio drama. It still exists, obviously. Well, it still exists in audiobooks, and it still exists on podcasts, because now you have people listening to these long, windy crime stories on podcasts. They dissect a murder for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And what is that show, Dateline on TV? Oh my goodness. If that doesn't hook you, where there's this nice family that just, lives in suburban such and such, and of course they break it down. But it takes like 2 hours to get through this, and they always leave you with, and then the sister found out something she never knew. Commercials follow, and so anyway.
I would love to do some of those on Peoria Life sometimes, reenact some of those
reenact.
radio.
So it's like all things come around. They change form a little bit, and because people are still interested. The line that I don't say we used, but that's attached to the newspaper is, if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, murder, problems, traffic accidents, whatever you want to say, the news of the day, as sad as it might be and as traumatic, that's what people want to know about. Because it's in your backyard. It's, I just passed that accident. I was at Portillo's on Saturday. We're coming back by the interstate. There's a car flipped on the road, upside down.
Drove right by it, yep.
You drove by?
Yeah.
And I thought, here's me in again, blinder mode. I wonder if the Journal-Star got that picture, Thankfully, I don't think anyone was hurt, which is always the most important thing. But they don't have any staff, so they didn't get the picture. It's all those people that probably people shot it on their own, and it might have wound up on Facebook. I don't know.
But how do you feel about all that focus on the negative? That kind of seems to be what.
I don't know if it's a focus on the negative. I think it's human. Well, if it is, if you're fixated with it, I think it is a problem. But I think I'm just going by when we put up our stories, at least they're still doing this, I'm sure, on the board, the stories that have been written on that day, you see how many hits they have. And of course, leading at the top. Accidents and murder will always be at the top. So I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what people are picking on. I guess it's the highest impact. If you know that somebody has been killed, you want to know about that for your own protection. Perhaps maybe it happened in your area, maybe it happened in a way that scares you or upsets you. the point is that's human nature to want to explore that. I don't think you should feed that. I don't think you should go, oh, let's just do, but I think just the popularity of a show like Dateline is because, hey, everything looked fine there for a while, and then it sort of got dark, and did he really do that, or did she really do that? That's curiosity. People, you can't fight that. I mean, again, I don't know that I don't particularly care to watch that show because it drags me into it, and I'm like, oh, no, I have to find out, and it's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back, So there's that side of it. But I think the old idea about negative and positive news is a good one because we don't get enough good news. We don't find out about the guy the man or woman that's doing something, has been doing it for years, and does not expect a monetary reward, but is doing it because they simply want to help people, children, whatever it is. We still need that. And, hopefully we can do it in a way that doesn't seem maudlin or like we're trying to, preach to someone. Because, I think that's what turns people off is, oh, yeah, I know all that. It's like, we're so busy, we have to filter out things. I think that's a balance. And hopefully what you can do, and I think this is the battle, is you find the good stories and you make them interesting enough that'll hook somebody's interest. Because otherwise, I think we don't even realize it, but I think people are so sophisticated now in how they take in information. You have to be, because there's too much.
Yeah.
So we all filter our own in whatever way, good or bad. And the trick is, and I say trick, the science, art, whatever you want to call it, is how do you find a way to, this stream of stuff that comes at us, how do you find a way to get it to somebody and build up some numbers and reach that person? I think we're all trying to do that. This whole thing about data, every time you turn around, businesses want data, Facebook is data. Well, what is all this data stuff? Well, it's about what people want, what their interests are. I was just reading in the Wall Street Journal about now when you go into not now, but maybe in the future, when you go to a store, there'll be recognition, facial recognition. They know who you are. It's like that movie, was it Minority Report? Where
so scary.
you're walking down and the commercials are talking to you, the billboards are talking to you personally, because, hey, we know who you are. And that's coming. I think China is already on top of that. And there's privacy issues there, and that's a story we can explore. Yeah. But the point is, everybody wants this data. They want to know do you like ice cream? Do you like strawberry? Do you like vanilla? Where do you want to live? In the country, in the city? This from.
And if it's not socially acceptable, how do we change that?
Yeah. So we're gathering all this stuff, and I think that's fine. I guess it's important to, it's just like, fill out this form, and we'll tell you. Well, Amazon, you can't order anything there without. Oh, you order a backpack for your child, and next thing you know, hey, here's the thermos bottle. Hey, here's some shoes for that kitty. You had a backpack, right? Well, we'll work it out with you. And sure enough, you wind up. Oh, okay, I do want that. Yeah.
So we've come to the end of our time.
It flies by just like
it goes
that.
really quick.
Yeah. Well, you got a motor mouth. It's going to happen.
Hey, it's all good because we're all talking about Peoria and the good things that are happening in Peoria. So, what do you want to do next? What's your...
Well, I think I want to keep exploring because I think when I hear this thing about Peoria needs to find a new identity, whatever that is. Because the Caterpillar thing is complicated because a cat's still down the street. Caterpillar's still here. There's many cat people here. That's not going away anytime soon. But the idea that somehow, they moved the headquarters, so now we got to find a new stamp to put on the envelope. No longer you don't want to say Peoria, no longer the headquarters of Caterpillar Inc. But I think this whole business of medical technology, arts, / whatever, is going to be fascinating because everyone's doing that. All of it. In Iowa and Michigan and Indiana. Towns are also doing this thing. So what is it that sets Peoria apart? And I think that whole exploration, thanks to you and Stacy and others that are involved here, will be something I look forward to.
It's great. So your show, Tarter Sauce, or is it Source?
Well, that's the
Okay?
question. My pronunciation was sauce, but it's spelled source.
Right.
But I like to keep that alive, just
grew up
to
in
confuse
Boston,
people.
right?
Yeah, well, right. I can't
Source
talk.
sauce,
I can't talk.
potato.
So that starts tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
at 10:45.
Okay.
Peoria Life here. Also, check them out every Tuesday at 9 o'clock.
Great. I look forward to it, and we try to, you guys, what, almost 200 shows?
Next week.
This is 199. Yeah.
Well, I'll start number 1 tomorrow.
There
so
you go.
I probably won't catch up to you. So, I think it's just fun to be part of the mix.
Appreciate you being part of the mix. This is In the Neighborhood on PeoriaLife.com. We're here in the Widecast studios in downtown Peoria. Widecast, or In the Neighborhood, is really about inspiring volunteers, highlighting difference makers, and really promoting civic pride in the Peoria area. Steve Tarter is, I'll say, a lifelong journalist. It's kind of in your blood. Check him out Tuesdays at 9 o'clock. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
PeoriaLife.com